Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I hide my dark circles, correct pigmentation and discoloration on the skin, and also how I keep my concealer from creasing. So if you find that you have a little bit of darkness peeking through your concealer, or you struggle covering up any of those sunspots or sun damage, or even a sun mustache, this video is going to be great because I will show you the exact products which will help you get rid of that completely. And I'm also going to be showing you how I make sure that my concealer stays completely smooth and crease free, so no concealer settles in my fine lines. Hopefully this video will be really helpful for any of you who might be struggling with hiding any discoloration or pigmentation on the skin, and also for any new makeup artists, as these are the exact techniques that I use when working on clients too. So I really hope you guys enjoy the video. Please give it a thumbs up if you do, and let's get on into it. Okay, so what needs to be done before anything else is prepping and priming the skin. So I've already put on some of my moisturizer and primer, but I'm also going to be applying an eye cream. Eye creams are definitely something that a lot of people forget about when putting corrector and concealer on. So without any sort of hydration underneath the eyes, you are already setting yourself up for creasing. And that is mainly because the corrector and concealer will be sat on top of a dry surface. It's almost like putting on foundation without any sort of moisturizer. There is obviously the exception of someone who is super oily underneath the eyes, but even when I've worked on a client with that skin type, I still use an eye cream. I just change the thickness of it, so I would go on with something that's a lot thinner. The eye cream that I'm going to be using is just one from Estee Lauder. I'm quite dry underneath the eye, so it's really important that I use one, and I do suffer a little bit with eye eczema. You don't want to use too much eye cream though, that's also a problem. Too much eye cream can also encourage creasing as well, because then it will be far too greasy. So I usually take a little bit less than a pea size amount, and I pop it on my ring fingers, and then I smooth it between my ring fingers until the product goes clear, and then that's enough for both under eyes. And I don't usually apply it onto my eyelid because that's going to make the eyelid really greasy for eyeshadow. Moving on to the next step, which is fixing the darkness underneath our eyes. And this can be done easily with a colour corrector. Your under eyes are usually darker than the rest of your face because it is a thinner area of skin. Obviously, tiredness and aging are two of many other causes. So depending on your skin tone, you might find that you have different colours underneath your eyes. For someone of my skin tone or fairer, you might find that you have bluey or purpley tones, sometimes even a little bit of redness as well. Whereas darker skin tones tend to have more of a brown colour underneath the eyes. So you can counteract any of that discoloration with a colour corrector. Now, I know I don't have super dark under eyes, so I'm not claiming that mine are that bad, but I find when I go on with just my concealer, I can notice the discoloration slightly starting to peek through, and that can leave me with a little bit of a grey cast right in my inner corner where my discoloration is at its darkest. So if I want maximum coverage and brightness, I will use a colour corrector alongside my concealer. The product that I'm going to be showing you today is by Bobbi Brown, and this is their creamy corrector. These correctors are the best that I've found for discoloration and pigmentation, and that is because they are the closest match to your skin colour, and they are really great for all skin tones as well. The Bobbi Brown correctors come in two main shade ranges, which is called Bisque and Peach. So the Bisque range is for someone who has more of bluey or purpley discoloration, and the Peach range is for more brown discoloration. They do have a mid-range called Peach Bisque, which is a little bit of a mixture of both as well. If you have a little bit of both and you can't really determine what colours you see underneath your eyes, the Peach Bisque is like a happy medium. So I'm not sure if I already mentioned, but the shade I'm going to be using is called Light to Medium Bisque. I always recommend to apply the corrector with a brush because you apply the product a whole lot better. If you were to apply it with your fingers, the oil and the warmth in your fingertips will eventually wipe a lot of that product away. So I always recommend to apply the product with the brush, and then you can choose how you want to blend it out afterwards. So already you can see that that's completely taken away the bluey purpley tone underneath my eye. You don't necessarily need to apply it all the way along the under eye. I would focus it in the areas that you have the most discoloration. If you have a lot of redness through the center of your face, you can always take the excess that's on your brush and drag that through the center of your face as well, because by the time you blend it out with your sponge or your fingers, it will be really seamless into the skin and just give a light correction before foundation. I'm going to press this in with my fingertips. My fingertips. So I'm actually going to use a corrector for another area on my face. This is something that I never mention when I'm doing my makeup because I hate drawing attention to it, because it's that typical thing is that once you've seen it, you can't unsee it and then you always notice it. So I have a little bit of a sun mustache and that is just a little bit of pigmentation from the sun, and it obviously gets a whole lot darker the more I have my face in the sun. This pigmentation is more of a brown tone, so I'm going to be using the shade Peach Bisque to correct that. Any of the peach or peach bisque colours are really good for sunspots or pigmentation. So when I apply this, I make sure I apply it everywhere. I don't just concentrate it in the concerned area. I don't want to actually draw attention to it, and having a lot of that concentrated product in one place can do that. If you're covering areas anywhere around the face, maybe something like a sunspot or pigmentation patches on your cheek, anything like that, make sure that you obviously cover the affected area, but also feather it around the outside so that when you blend it out, it's not all concentrated in one place. So obviously you can still see it because I haven't blended it in, but it's not something that's like a big chunk of product in that one area, because obviously then you will highlight that even more, if that makes any sense. Right, I'm going to go ahead and apply my foundation all over the skin. I'm going to avoid this area of the corrector because I'm going to pop my concealer on top of that in a moment. So I'll be back once I have applied my foundation. So in the order that I apply things, I always do my contour first and then my concealer. I'm just going to be using my Makeup Revolution Fast Base Stick Foundation just as a little bit of contour. So moving on to concealer, I'm going to pop this straight on top of the corrector. If you find that your corrector is creased a little bit, which it naturally will, I just like to press a little bit back in. And the concealer I'm going to be using is my NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer. This is in the shade Custard. I'm going to talk to you about the different types of powder that I like for underneath eyes, and both of them are loose powders. Ones that I like to use the most are the Laura Mercier Loose Translucent Powder or the Huda Beauty Easy Bake Powder. So before we go ahead and apply any powder, I'm going to go back in with my sponge and press in the under eyes. If you don't, you will powder on top of any creasing that has already occurred, which will happen naturally anyway when your products are wet underneath the eyes. And then I go in with a beauty blender. This is a really tiny one. I find it a lot easier to use a smaller beauty blender underneath the eye area than a bigger one, and I always use a sponge to press in my powder rather than a brush. Again, by using a brush, I find I still notice creasing throughout the day, whereas with a sponge I don't. And I take about that much underneath the eye and I go ahead and press it straight on. And it will just mattify the under eye area. And then I press that powder in anywhere where I get quite oily as well. So by using a brush, I find that you still end up with a little bit of creasing throughout the day, and it's the same when I apply it on a client as well. So I always like to apply my powder with a sponge as opposed to a brush. One thing I have to mention is that by following all of these steps and doing all these little tips and tricks, you are not going to end up with a completely flawless, smooth under eye. If you naturally have fine lines or dryness or patchiness, anything like that under the eye, that is not going to go away. Obviously any texture underneath the eye can be taken away by changing your skincare or just using that eye cream that you don't use, but when it comes to fine lines, they don't disappear with powder and they still stay there. The only thing that we get rid of is the product settling in those fine lines. I still have those little lines underneath my eye. They are just there all the time. I can't change that. So no amount of powder is going to actually take away those little lines. All we can do is just try and keep it super hydrated to take away any texture, and then also mattifying and powdering so that the product doesn't settle into those creases. So I'm going to go ahead and finish off my base makeup and do my eyes off camera, and I will be right back in just a sec. So there we have it, guys. Those are my tips and tricks for hiding dark circles, correcting discoloration and pigmentation, and my tips on how to stop your concealer from creasing. If you do have any questions that I haven't covered, please feel free to ask me in the comments and I will happily answer them. Again, And as I said in the intro, these techniques are really helpful when working on clients as well. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really, really helps me out. And I would love it if you subscribe to my channel too. I'm upping my game. I am uploading videos every Sunday and Wednesday now. Thank you guys so, so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye! Do you want to come here? Do you want to?